Thanks so much for joining this episode of the Enneagram and Marriage podcast today. Over 80% of Americans say they want to write a book, but so many don't know how, where to start, what to do. Today, we're in for a treat as you figure out ways to share your gifts, your life, your legacy, your light with Ariel Curry, Liz Morrow. They are professional writers who have a new book just for you out on how to write a book called The Hungry Authors, perfectly titled as you situate yourself and get oriented to just all the processes that you get to choose from. Yes, empowering you to choose on how you will share your story in the world. I'm so honored that they're spending time with us today. Not only have I been able to spend time on Ariel and workings of her marriage, but more importantly, to this topic today, we are really inviting you because Ariel and Liz are such specialists in terms of book writing. And I want to be honest, Ariel helped me to find my agent when it was time to write as well. So you know that I've done several self-publishing projects, and now I decided, okay, Enneagram needs a bigger audience. Let's go bigger. And Ariel was the person to choose. Liz is also incredible. Liz is a writer, a collaborator. She's worked with Big Five. She's worked with thought leaders all over. Of course, you know now she's writing her book. She's a ghostwriter. We're going to talk about that today in case you need assistance. Ariel has her own Ariel Curry editorial, but now she's actually moved into working as a senior acquisitions editor, and she's at Source Books now. And we just are so happy that they've written this no nonsense guide for nonfiction writers to get their story out. So, and it might not be your story, it might be a gift you have, a lesson you want to teach. They're going to explain the differences between creative and prescriptive nonfiction and so much more today. So I'm so glad you pressed play. I hope that you just sit in and take some notes and also receive the invitation to get their book and support them as they do this courageous thing, but also really take time to get to know them. They have so many wonderful avenues and outlets that they're going to share about for you to get to know them personally. And I love that. As you know, I was personally helped. So I am so grateful to finally get to share this podcast episode with you. Also, if you had a chance to check out the Ennea Summit on mental health, which I hope you did, there were so many great talks there, and you're not too far gone. If you haven't, there's still the all access pass in my show notes today. So make sure you grab that. Take your time if you need that. Now, let's talk to Ariel and Liz today about you bringing that book idea forward. Ariel and Liz, I'm so happy to have you on the Enneagram and Marriage Pod. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us. We're so excited to be here.
Thank you.
Yes, congratulations on your new beautiful book. For those who are watching on YouTube, but most of you are audio listeners, the Hungry Authors book is officially here. Guys, congrats. Are you so excited?
It has been so fun and just so, I'm so grateful and just excited to see it come to life. It's been so cool. I've been on the other side of the process as an editor, but to actually have it come to fruition for myself as an author has just been an amazing experience.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I love that, Ariel. And Liz, are you feeling that way as well or similar?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. Some of my friends were asking over the weekend, they're like, "Do you feel different?" And I was like, I mean, I think it's overstating it to say that I feel different, but it feels different. Like to have it out in people's hands and I mean, obviously we've got promoting to do, but in general, to have it like be officially done and real, yeah, it does kind of feel different. And it's humbling and overwhelming. And yeah, it does feel different. It really does.
That's neat. And I love how you foreshadowed your personality type when you said, "Do I feel different?" So, you guys, we can also take our listeners as, although I've shared about you guys before you came on too, of course, and we're going to do more of that. Tell our listeners a little bit about your Enneagram types and a little bit about just how this book came together. But first, we'll talk about your Enneagram types and a little bit about how the two of you met.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Ariel. You
well,
actually know more than I do.
all right. I'll start us off. I'm an Enneagram 9 with a pretty consistent one wing. And I think I identify primarily as a social subtype. So I'm a little bit more outgoing and extroverted than the typical 9, but I still have that very core need to go with other people's flow and really be in alignment with everybody around me. So that is where the 9 the 9 comes into play for me. But I think we make a really good team. Liz, do you want to share what you are?
Yeah, I'm a 5. I don't speak like Enneagram language as fluently because I just don't know as much about it. I had a phase a long time ago where I was deep into it, but it was like 6 or 7 years ago now. So I feel like I'm a little out of it, but I'm definitely a 5. I think I have a wing 6, but I am one of those people who at different points have gone back and forth a little bit, but I'm pretty sure that I'm a wing 6. I don't know my subtype, but yeah, I'm pretty squarely a 5. I am told, pretty regularly by the Enneagram gurus in my life, things that I do that are very 5-ish. So I think I'm squarely a 5.
That's awesome. And that's what I was alluding to when I was thinking about you not necessarily feeling different at the book launch.
Yes, very astute.
But you're feeling differently about the book. You're seeing it feels different. And so that is a beautiful way to chat about it. And you guys are friends in the 9-5 pairing. We've talked about, of course, you have your partners as well, but here you are writing this book together in the 9-5 pairing. So just before we get to talk to our audience about building their books and their dreams, I just thought we might share, how do a 9 and a 5 meet? How did you guys feel like, oh, this would be good to write a book with these two personalities?
Yeah, well, we met because we were both freelancing for our friend Jeff Goins. So Liz was kind of hitting out on maternity leave. I was coming in as a brand new freelancer. And so Liz and I kind of met through him. And then after Liz had her baby, she kind of reached back out and was like, "Hey, I'm entering the freelance realm as well." And we just connected via Voxer and kind of hit it off, became friends. We started meeting together regularly just to encourage each other as, new freelancers.
Mhm.
And we just realized pretty quickly that we had a lot of things in common. We thought very similarly about how we construct books. I was really interested in like ghostwriting and collaboration. So I had a lot of questions for Liz about that. And we just, had a bunch of conversations, kind of all, realizing our alignment in so many different ways. And then both of us separately kind of had this idea to work on a project where we would teach authors how to, kind of map out their books. We each talked to our friend Kent Sanders about it. And Kent was like, "Well, you two are friends now. You guys should just do something together." So it was really his encouragement that kind of brought us together. And from there, we talked about a lot of different options, a course, you know, all different kinds of things. And then it kind of ended up being a book and then a podcast.
Mhm.
And then we also did courses. So we kind of did it all.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. And I love how somebody else in your life, some maven out there, brought the two of you together and connected you, and it worked. And you'd already had a previous relationship. And here you are like, what should we do together? And I'm sure you just started to laugh when you realized, of course, it's a book. We're both writers.
Yep. Yep,
Mhm.
exactly.
Well, that's beautiful. And I know it's helping our audience members also to feel a little bit of courage rising up in them as they think about how sometimes you just don't wake up and say, I'm graduating high school, I'm next step writing a book. Often there's lots of steps in between. And you
Mhm.
guys are such gifted writers, I think largely because of all of your experience in the field. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that? Just because I want to brag on you guys, but you can do it better. So tell us about just a little bit about what you've each done in the book world. I know it would take a long time to share everything, but maybe just share for a moment about what you each have done, because there are years of experience, like over 2 decades between you guys, I believe. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Um,
Wow.
yeah, great question, especially because it is one of those careers where if you want to be a writer, there's no or an editor, there's no straight path. You don't just like get a degree in writing and then officially you go are a writer, it's
Yeah.
like kind of winding and
Mhm.
it's not the same for everybody. But yeah, I got started because I worked with Jeff a long time ago and was his assistant for a long time. That's one of my it's not always super easy, but whenever people do ask me about trying to become a writer, one of the best things I think you can do is go assist somebody. And that's often a really great way into the industry. But I worked with him for a long time as his assistant. And then, like Ariel said, almost 3 years ago, I went out on my own and started freelancing. And I am primarily a ghostwriter, is what I tell people at cocktail parties, but more specifically and accurately, I am a collaborative writer. That's my favorite new term, and the term that my agent uses a lot when she talks about me. But basically, I help people write their books with and for them. The scope of that can change. Ghostwriting is generally you're doing all of the work, or, well, all of the typing on the keyboard. And then there are different levels of collaboration depending on, the needs of the client. But I help people do that. And most of my clients have traditional book deals. So I've done four books with Hay House. I have a 3-book contract with Penguin Random House. And so I've done Baker, Harper Horizon, Harper Leadership, worked with a lot of those publishing houses now at this point. And most of my clients tend to be entrepreneurs, industry experts, and thought leaders who have a decent platform and want to turn their message into a book. And so I help them do that. I've done that with people like Stu McLaren and Natalie Ellis of Boss Babe, and Casey and Megan Caston of Marriage 365, Lucinda Halpern,
Wow.
Lucinda Literary. So yeah, that's what I do.
That's amazing. I saw Stu McLaren on the back of your book. I did not know this about Marriage 365. I've been asked to kind of do one of their just intro pieces. I'm getting the name wrong. You guys know it right now. I can't even think of it, but where
Oh, like a
you chose some
forward or
yeah,
a
not the forward, but just a little,
like an
Like
endorsement?
a
yeah,
blurb.
some
What
sort
are
of
Oh,
you
endorsement.
cool.
what are you gonna blurb?
That was a long time ago.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Okay,
yeah.
cool. Because
But
they're
that's
like active clients of mine right now. They're so like
oh,
I was out in California last month with them. Yeah, they're amazing. And Casey, the husband, is coming to our party this weekend in Greenville.
Yeah.
gosh, that is
Yeah,
so cool. I love
yeah,
that. Well, that's so
yeah. They're
cool.
also clients of Lucinda's. And she got them an amazing deal with PRH, and I'm helping them do that. Yeah.
Ah, what a small world. And I am inviting all of our listeners into it too, because you're just sharing the secret sauce. Just the social capital is so important. So knowing Ariel and Liz now, you guys, you have an inroads already. So I love that. Ariel, tell us a little bit about how you really got into this, because again, it's not going to be the same route as Liz. It's not going to be the same as our listeners.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. My route to writing a book and kind of working in this space was a little bit maybe of a more traditional career pathway where I was an English major, then I interned at a few different publishing houses, and then I got a job as an editorial assistant at a publishing house in California and kind of worked my way up to senior acquisitions editor there. That was at a little bit more of like an academic house. And I was there for almost 10 years. And then I left that role a few years ago because I really wanted to branch out and do more like trade commercial nonfiction publishing work, kind of outside of the academic realm. I wanted to work on the books that you would find like at Barnes and Noble and in the airport bookstores and things like that. So for the last 3 years, I was primarily doing developmental editing on those kinds of books, more commercial nonfiction. And I did some ghostwriting and collaborating as well.
Mhm.
And then an opportunity just arose in the last few months to join the team at Sourcebooks. So I said yes to that. And so I'm now back in house at a traditional publishing company called Sourcebooks, and I'm acquiring nonfiction for them. So I'm kind of back behind the desk as an acquisitions editor.
Wow.
I'm scoping out new book projects. I'm, trying to court and woo potential authors to us. I'm sending out rejection letters if need be,
That's
kind of
hard.
doing all of that to decide,
Yeah.
which are the best publishing opportunities for us to invest in.
You guys cover the full gamut. And I think as nines and
Yes.
fives, oddly enough, but beautifully, you both make amazing ghostwriters because you both study humans so well, so carefully, so considerately. So I think that is so beautiful for your types. And of course, I also love hearing about that, Ariel, as you just shared that you are really grafting in authors by showing that harmonizing gift that you have for your Enneagram as well, to be able to really meet them where they're at and understand them. I'm sure that's such a big part of a writer choosing who they're going to work with.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think it's a very like it's a 9 trait that I like to kind of have my or like dip my toe into a bunch of different things. Like I want to do some editing, I want to do some writing, I want to do some, of that and some of this, and I want to be doing acquisitions and I want to do, whatever. So I think that's kind of a 9 trait too, is like all of it appeals to me. I just love being part of every single step of the book process. So whatever way that I can be involved with books, I'm pretty happy.
Yes. Well, this is a great background to now our quest for our listeners who have been brave to press play to follow a dream a little bit more closely. Many of them want to pursue something big, a big goal. In many cases, probably they feel like they have a book in them. And so, both of you guys, we're so excited to ask you a few more questions for now our listeners as they delve in. And I think I'll just start with one of the bigger questions overarching, and we can get tiny and micro, but just tell us what everybody should know if they want to write a book. And this might even be something to do with your beautiful hungry authors quote that I've been sharing around with my young writing teen friends who are starting out their books.
So, we define a hungry author as a writer who is determined to succeed. They want to and will be published. They take feedback well and don't shy away from the hard work. You will find their butts in the chairs and their fingers on the keyboard. They believe in their ideas and they know they will impact others.
That is so good, you guys. And it is just already answering that question in part. And now, Liz, can you finish that? Because that is just so beautifully said, you guys.
Yeah, well, one of the higher level things before we get into like how to map out your book and how to decide on your publishing route and all of that, which is important if you want to have a book that exists beyond your own computer, is you have to have this mindset that you're going to do it no matter what. Publishing, we get into the book about how to, things that you can do to help increase your odds of getting traditionally published. There's a lot of ways we can help you with that. But one of the most important things is you going into it and just deciding that it's going to happen. You're not going to let publishing gatekeepers stop you. If you need to pivot, you're going to pivot and you're just going to keep moving forward and you're going to keep sitting down and doing the work. And it probably won't be a super straightforward path. It almost never is. There will be bumps along the way, but you have to keep going. And this is so important because, it's important beyond just like rah, rah, cheerleader, be resilient. Every editor and agent wants to work with a writer who has this mindset, because all along the way, again, you will run into things. You will have to pivot. If it's not your big overarching idea, you will have to pivot the direction of a chapter. You have to pivot a marketing plan. You will, if you acquire an agent or if an agent signs you, when you start pitching publishers, you will almost certainly get rejected and you will get feedback you don't like. And it's just all part of it. And so knowing that you have decided that you're going to succeed no matter what. That's like Ariel and I describe it as this feeling that you can get from somebody is like, I'm going here. You can come with me or not, but I'm going there. And that's like the feeling, our good friend Lucinda Halpern calls these people the crusaders. Like they will succeed. And you can sense this in somebody often early on when you talk to them about their book and their publishing goals. They're like, well, if I don't get a traditional deal after a certain amount of time, I'm going to self-publish it. And then I'm going to seek, or I'll hybrid publish it. And here's my marketing plan. And then my next book is going to be this. And you just get the sense that like, wow, they're going somewhere. I can get on board or I can sit back and watch because it's happening no matter what. And that's a hungry author. And that's probably more important. Everything else we can teach you. We can teach you how to come up with a big idea. We can teach you how to map a book. But that mindset, that has to come from you.
That's so good. And it makes me want to ask you about your ghostwriting too. Guys, I have a lot of questions today. They have been so generous to answer them all. Thank you guys. But that just already makes me feel like we've really dug into encouraging our listeners not to give up. So tell us now, somebody's got their ideas out. They're not fully polished, but they're out there. Sometimes you guys end up, especially Liz, ghostwriting. Tell us a little bit about what somebody might do if they're in that spot. They eventually may want to pitch Ariel at Sourcebooks, for instance, but before that, they want to hire Liz to be a ghostwriter. Tell us what that might look like.
Well, if you I occasionally work on book proposals. So if you want to traditionally publish, first we would need to do that.
Mhm.
And Ariel does well, not anymore. I guess you don't do proposals anymore. But Ariel obviously has an insane amount of
I read
experience.
and assess and reject proposals
There
now.
you
Yeah.
go. But yeah, so first, a collaboration almost always starts with a proposal. I am not interested in all of it like Ariel. I only do proposals and full manuscript ghostwriting, and I almost only do the proposal if I am almost sure that it will lead to a manuscript collaboration. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how deep you want to get into it, but it starts with a proposal, and then if that sells and we want to keep working together, then we talk about the level, the kinds of collaboration help that you want. But and that's what it looks like to work with me.
Oh, that's good. I just feel like some people will be wanting this book because I've heard from several of my counseling friends and clients
Mhm.
who say, yes, I want to know all the steps to becoming, they don't know the word hungry author, but an author. But I am also curious about ghostwriting. So thank you for just letting them
Mhm.
know as they connect with you guys, they can dive deeper on that question and that there are
Mhm.
levels where
Mhm.
people sometimes need more or less help, it sounds like.
Yeah, and if you're interested, I don't know if this is a very small group of your listeners, but if you're interested in ghostwriting as a profession, not as a
Hmm.
client, occasionally I get people wanting to know about becoming a ghostwriter or starting a ghostwriting business, and I don't really have a formal way of communicating that information. But if you are one of those people, you're welcome to email
Oh,
me, and I'll just tell you what I know. But
okay.
yeah,
Oh my gosh, thank you. We'll share your email in the notes too. That is
sure.
so helpful. Okay, so we now have covered that you do ghostwriting and we're giving people options of, levels if they did that. Other than that, what would you guys say stops people from writing their book? We already said one thing is that they just don't necessarily know all the grit and pivoting it's going to take. Is there anything else we should just know off the cuff? Like, please know this is one of the things that seems to stop some of our authors in their tracks.
I think a big piece of it is imposter syndrome and the fear, right? Of fear of like, oh my gosh, is this going to be worth it? Is this going to be, is anyone going to care about what I have to say? That is probably the biggest fear that we have. And I cannot tell you how many times I get authors emailing me or asking me, is my idea good?
Mhm.
And just that reassurance, just is it a good idea? That is what people seem to want the most. And that is why Liz and I often like one of our most popular teachings is your best-selling book idea, because that is the thing that everyone wants to know. And that's really the starting point is do you have a marketable idea and how do you make it a marketable idea? Because almost any idea can work if you know how to kind of shape it and mold it to meet the demands and the interests and the trends of the market. So
Mhm.
that is one of the things that we bring to the table as professionals who have been doing this for a very long time is that we know how to take kind of your raw idea and help you shape it into something that a lot of people are going to want to read. And so we have, one of our chapters, chapter 5 is all about how to shape your idea into something that could really work. And we teach you, how to like test that idea in the market, how to get feedback on that idea, how to be willing to kind of, shift and shape it as you will. But that is such an important part because, like I said, just that fear of is anyone going to care? Is it a good idea to begin with? And what do I do with this feeling of like of fear that's just getting in the way?
Mhm. That's a really great addendum to some of the more practical concerns as you went right into the heart space. And that is often really at the bottom of it, right? We think, oh, it's just because I won't have time, or maybe I don't know if I'll have the grit if I have to shift or pivot. But those are upper level questions. You're saying dig
Right.
deep. If you have a beautiful idea, it still may be raw, but it will resonate with somebody if you're willing to shape it to culture, not just like, okay, this is my own journal. Of course, that's great if you want to
Right.
do your own journaling, but if you want to share it with the world, you have to presumably care about the world and then be willing to create something beautiful for the world. Now, I know that as an author, and Ariel was one of my first inspirations for making my book a reality. And my concern was, uh-oh, what if people are bored because there's other Enneagram books out there? And you just really named that. It was sort of a form of imposter syndrome, right? To say, what if people are bored because this topic's been covered? Do you guys get that one a lot?
Totally. Yes. And I think we feel that as authors ourselves. I mean, it doesn't go away. And no matter how much
Yeah.
kind of industry knowledge you have,
Yeah.
every single author that I know faces that fear of feeling like, oh my goodness, who am I to put anything out into the world and then to advocate for it and kind of put it in front of people's faces and say, you should read this because I really believe it'll make your life better. Who am I to insist on that, you know? That's definitely something that every author faces, including us.
You guys are so sweet. Thank you for not making me feel alone in that. And I hope our listeners feel less alone too. And you are so encouraging to say you're going to make it original, you're going to make it your voice. And I don't know if you want to speak to that too, Liz, but either way, I think it comes down to also this question of when you do find your voice, how do we know what, if, especially if it's nonfiction, what genre we're going to bring it into? Because I would imagine that has something to do with the way a story is told. And I would also imagine many of our listeners didn't even know there was different categories. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that, either of you.
Yeah. No, not me. Ariel will talk about genre. She's the genre guru.
And it's in your book
It's
too, guys, for people who
yeah.
are wanting to read. I love
Yes,
this.
she is the genre. Well, I was actually going to say, so this got cut, although hopefully it will go in the next book because I think it should. But Ariel wrote this beautiful piece about creativity and marketability and just the balance between those two things. Again, we had to kill that darling and realize it was a little bit out of scope of this particular book. But
Yeah.
when it comes to that, finding your voice, finding something that will sell if you want to, if that's a goal of yours, it is this balance between your creativity and the marketability of your book and being flexible and compromising enough to let experts help you, but not compromising ultimately, on your vision and, your dream for what your book will become. So anyway, hopefully we'll share more about that in later books,
Yeah.
but it is a balance. Okay, Ariel, you talk about genre because that's
Okay.
you.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we define genre as a set of hidden expectations. So this is kind of the unsaid promises that your book is making to readers. So when a reader goes to pick up, a fiction book, what do they expect? They expect a really engrossing story. They want to be captivated. They want to be swept into this world that you've created. When a reader picks up a memoir, they expect to learn about, the situation that an author overcame in their lives. When they pick up a prescriptive nonfiction book, they expect to be taught something that's going to improve their lives or solve a problem. So when you start thinking about genre as a set of reader expectations, it becomes a lot easier to start to say, okay, here is the genre that my book is going to best fit into. Am I trying to teach something? Am I trying to tell a story? Those are kind of the guiding questions. And of course, there's lots of ways that you might, want to kind of combine some things. But we really kind of teach people and we advocate first for authors to think about, staying kind of coloring between the lines, at least to start. Kind of like how a musician learns their scales to start with. They learn all of the, core music theory before they start playing jazz. You want to do the same thing as an author. So as an author, you want to learn like what are the core or what are the core characteristics of each genre, learn those, know how to do those and deliver those really, really well. And then if you want to start breaking some of those rules because you're a very fluent author and know how to do that with skill, amazing, go for it. But definitely, kind of finding your genre is the first step because whatever those expectations are that readers have, they're going to guide almost every single decision that you make for your book from here on out. So after you, figure out your idea, then deciding the genre is really like the critical next step.
Mm. Wow. Okay. So that is something people need to do as they get started. And they could be talking with a
Yes.
book coach about this, a ghostwriter, presumably, somebody to help them figure it out. They could be reading your book because I want to make sure everyone knows there's a beautiful section on this part in there. And I love Liz adding there's even more to come from you guys with writing. So,
Yes.
yay, thank you. That's really helpful to hear. Also, it makes me wonder as we get started, as we pick our genre, a lot of people want to do this with somebody, and you already mentioned it a couple times. Sometimes that person needs an agent. I know each of you have talked about that with me. You've, shared a bit about it today. And in your book, one thing I love that you said is sometimes it's hard for people to get an agent, and not everyone needs one,
Mhm.
but sometimes they do want one. And one of your customers you mentioned in the book, was one of your clients had tried 10 agents and was rejected by all. But I love how you said, but they got one. All they needed was one. So, can
Mhm.
you tell us more about the process of seeking an agent and just a little bit about what we might expect if we put our hearts out there, we find our idea, we select our genre, and we've got our maybe book proposal written, and then we're like, how do I find an agent?
Yeah. Well, um, there are lists of agents everywhere. So you can just start Googling. We always tell people, if you have a good idea of some of your comp books or books that you really like, that if you check the acknowledgments, they're almost always going to thank their agent. So you can go looking in the books that you like already.
Mhm.
Always, 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 forever and ever, even if this person represents a completely different genre than you, if you have any kind of warm contact, start there. Start with who you know, make a friend, start tweeting at them, start being their LinkedIn friend.
Mhm.
Just start, doing your research. And then of course, there are, lots of good resources out there about how to pitch an agent and what exactly to say in your query letter and that kind of thing. We touch on that. Well, we touch on book proposals in our book, and then of course Lucinda has Get Signed, and you can also just Google and find some great references. But in general, it will almost always take a little bit of time. It's very rare for you to get a yes on your very first one. It does happen, but you have to have a lot of things kind of align. But yeah, you'll probably get some rejections, and it probably will have nothing to do with you or your book idea. They might just be full or not particularly interested in your book, which again does not have to do with your book. It's just personal taste. Everyone is, I don't like horror movies. It doesn't mean that, horror movies aren't great, like everyone's got their own taste and preferences and timing. And
Mhm.
maybe you're too similar to someone else on their list. There's just a million reasons that don't have anything to do with you and how wonderful you and your book idea are. Now, if you do start getting a lot of the same kind of feedback, like your platform is too small, or your
Mhm.
book idea is too niche, or, if you hear a couple of those things more than once, it might be time to start taking that feedback seriously
Mhm.
and build your platform a little bit or pivot your idea. But even that kind of response from an agent is good. I mean, not most of the time, but frequently, you might hear nothing. Your response might be nothing. So if they email you back with any kind of feedback, even if it's no, like they email you back. You've opened up the channels of communication. That's a chance for some feedback. That's a chance for a relationship. So and you can always pitch more than once. You can always ask them, hey, thank you for your feedback. If I pivot this a little bit, can I email you in 6 months? Like they're
Mhm.
just people who love books. And like you said, all it takes is one. It might take some time to find that right one, but it almost never has to do with you or your idea. It just has to do with everything lining up exactly right. And I always say this, I'm waiting for somebody to come out of the woodwork and prove me wrong. But I always say, if you give this 2 years, you try for 2 years in earnest and you take feedback seriously, I've never seen anybody fail. But you got to give it 2 years. It might take that long, but it'll happen.
That's really helpful to hear. And you're going to get older anyway. Why not do it with a book? So I
Yes.
love that, you guys. Thank you for encouraging us how to stay the long game and how to work hard when our inner critic says, your idea sucks. You're not very good. Everyone's done it before. This is going to bore people. And instead, you realize if you have a good core idea and you're
Mhm.
willing, of course, to be malleable,
Yeah.
then it is going to happen over
Mhm. And
time.
I don't know if it's helpful to hear, but we got like 10, 15 rejections. I mean, I don't know, maybe more than that when we were pitching
Yeah.
Hungry Authors. We got our agent pretty
Mm.
quickly. That was pretty fortunate for us, because of a warm contact. We knew somebody
Mm.
who knew somebody, and so we signed with an agent pretty quickly. But it took months to sell our book. We pitched tons of
Mhm.
publishers. One publisher who I had even worked with as a collaborator multiple times,
Yeah.
and they said no. Why? it was
Yeah.
too similar to a book on their list, you know? And
Mm.
that's an editor whose personal phone number I have, and we were friends, and she said no, you know? It just,
Yeah.
you never know. I mean, there's a million reasons that whatever, just find the right one.
Yeah, you guys are live examples of we experienced it, we went through it, we had to walk through our wounds, but we were hungry authors and we did it. And you guys already have become bestsellers. Congratulations on that. That was beautiful to see.
Thank
Tell me
you.
a little bit about as far as once we get an agent potentially, or maybe we're rejected, I'm going to leave it open in this question. You mentioned a little bit about not going the traditional route. Some of our audience does not have a large platform, but they do have a book in mind that they want to write. My husband's one of those people. He has the book he wants to write and he's already started writing. And he's not so concerned with a large platform as to just doing a quality project. So tell us about, I know there's so much more to say, and your book does a beautiful job, but just a little bit about hybrid or self-publishing so people know that those things do exist too, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And well, when Wes is ready to move forward or needs some help on that, we're always willing to help him.
Oh, thank
Um,
you so much. You're so
of
sweet.
course.
Oh,
So yeah, part 4 of our book is kind of helping authors decide what route they want to take. And like you said, traditional publishing is just one of the ways to get your book out to the world. And even though that's a pathway that a lot of people view as kind of the preferred pathway, it is not right for some people and it may not be what you want to do. So we kind of lay out, there's pros and cons to every single publishing pathway. And so you have to kind of, just like many things in life, you'll be excited about the pros, but you'll also have to live with whatever the cons of that pathway are. And self-publishing can be an amazing choice for people who really want to retain creative control over their work, who want to get the most reward from their book too, right? Because if you're working with a traditional publisher, they make the biggest investment in the book. They also keep most of the money from the book.
mhm.
So you as an author get a royalty if you're working with a traditional publisher and potentially in advance. But in self publishing, you get most of the money that you earn. You get to keep that money because you put most of the investment into it.
Mm,
So that's something, that can be a great option for a lot of people who really care about, having the final say over the cover and getting to, design the interior and really making sure that every single piece of the book is exactly how you want it.
mm,
That is when self publishing is a really great option. You could also do something called hybrid publishing, which is kind of a mix between traditional publishing and self-publishing. So it's kind of pitched as like, you get to help make the investment, and a traditional and the hybrid publisher will kind of meet you halfway with that investment,
mm,
and then you get to split the money more or less evenly, and
mm,
then they're going to take on a lot of the actions of a traditional publisher. So they're going to help you with design and marketing and stuff, but you still get the final say on things. So a hybrid publisher, that going that route is a little bit tricky because there are a lot of scams. And so we help people kind of, decipher what's real, what's not real. But if you find a
mm,
good hybrid publisher, and there are lots of good ones out there, if you find a good one, you can have an amazing experience. So it kind of
mm.
just depends on your preferences and how much work you're willing to do and what kinds of work you want to do. And then, of course, how much of the reward you want to keep for yourself. Those are kind of the decisions that an author has to make when deciding which publishing path to go for.
Yeah, that's super helpful for our listeners to hear. And even just me hearing that about hybrid, I didn't know much about it, but in your book, I'm so grateful you say be careful because I have noticed some scams, and you
Yep.
help us to sort that out. So thank you guys. And so you guys are letting people know if you do a traditional publisher, you've got to be more comfortable with some edits. You guys mentioned even for yourselves, something you wanted to put in the book wasn't able to be placed in. Was that something you figured out in the editing process?
That was something that we decided.
Okay.
Liz and I,
Okay,
one
that's
of
great.
our, I think our strengths as collaborators together has
Mhm.
been that we're very good and we're the most honest with each other about content. That, Liz very graciously told me a few times, like, hey, this is beautiful, but really not necessary here. We got to watch our word counts. And we're able to do that for each other.
Yeah.
That was an example of we made that decision for ourselves. But there are some things like we didn't get the subtitle that we wanted for our book. The publisher picked the subtitle and we were able to, request a couple changes to it. But really the publisher was the one who decided, this is going to be the subtitle for the book. And so that's kind of an example. We were very lucky. I think our publisher was fantastic in that they thankfully loved Hungry Authors as the main title. I was really worried that they weren't going to like that.
Love
Me
that.
too. Yeah.
But they loved it.
Yeah.
And they also allowed us, a lot of leeway in the cover as well. So that was really nice. We ended up going with one of the first things that they sent us. They really seemed to understand our vision. So we got lucky in a publisher in that regard. But sometimes, it just depends on the publishing team and the author and how tightly you hold on to your dreams about what the book is going to look like. But sometimes like cover and title can be a little bit contentious when you're working with a publisher.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed that personally. And
Yeah.
I decided to be more compliant stance when I did this book because my first books had all been self-published and I got to decide everything. So I came in with a very open view of what I would accept. And my husband's a compliant type and I often don't take his advice, which probably some of my listeners are like, oh my gosh, why are you doing a marriage pod? But they know this already. So, but I did hear because I was like, oh, perfect. You're a compliant type. And then Wes was like, do whatever they say. And it was so hard to do that, but I did it. And then guess what? You won't be surprised to hear me say, I regret that because that wasn't me. So it was really like a telling event. And I was like, Wes, I love you. I took your advice. You are so gifted with being right so much of the time. And he really is. But I was like, this is not your book. And so it was a good lesson for me. And thankfully, most of it was processed through. But when we're talking title and things like that, there were pieces that looking back, would have, had I gone into my assertive 3, 7, 8 space, I would have just fought for it harder. So I don't regret it because I liked experiencing something else. And now I know for sure who I am and what I'm going to do next time. And Baker Books did a beautiful job of working with that voice. They probably thought I was a 1, 2, or 6 in a way. But it's been a journey. So thank you for just telling everybody, like you had a gracious way of collabing. So if you're going to collab with somebody, find somebody who will tell you the truth, but also be able to tell you the hard truth, right? When you need it. And then you're also, I didn't get the second answer yet because I took you on a detour, but I'd love to come back to the edit question because I do feel like that's something that may surprise people. Just even what you just said, like you may not get the title or the subtitle, or there may be pieces edited out if you go with a publisher. Is that right?
Yeah, in general, I think because we had done so much writing before, we didn't get a ton of edits, but again, that's just probably more credit to our experience before. We had a pretty good idea of what the scope was, and Ariel is an editor by trade, so she's can predict pretty well what they're gonna want and not want. But yeah, in general, if it's your first book and your first time working with an editor, if you have a good one who cares a lot about the project enough to tell you when you've overshot it or undershot it, then yeah, you can expect, hopefully, and honestly, hopefully, like you hope that you get a good edit, that they tell you what is working and what's not working. I know we had a lot of faith in ourselves and our team, but if that hadn't been the case, like when I get a manuscript back that doesn't have a lot of edits, I wonder if they've read it or cared that much about it. You hope they go, this story isn't working, you didn't go deep enough here, then that they're really giving you some good feedback there. But yeah, it hurts. I mean, it personally, your pride, and sometimes just because you spend a lot of time on that chapter and then they go, that's really out of scope and you got to cut it, and yeah, it doesn't always feel good, but almost always it's the right choice.
Yeah. thank you for just reaffirming that. I think it is almost always the right choice because if you picked a publishing house that you do trust, even if, like me, you err on the side of, oh, I wish I would have fought a little more, ultimately, there's a safe holding ground within that because you're like, they actually do know more. And sometimes it is better to go with them. So that's good that you just shared that so people can trust. If you want to go traditional, maybe hit a bigger market. Not everyone does. Some are bigger with the self-publish, especially with the help of your book behind them. It's helpful to hear that. So thank you. And then last couple of questions I just wanted to ask. You have a beautiful part in your book about book mapping, and you have some illustrations. And this is one of the biggest pieces I think our readers might want to definitely get your book. Can you just hint to us what they might find when they open the pages on book mapping and why they might need your book to take them further here?
Yeah. Book mapping is the thing that Liz and I really bonded over when we first started dreaming up this project. And it's kind of become our baby,
Oh,
even though I don't like
wow.
to say that, but the book mapping
Wow.
part of it is probably both of our
Oh my
favorites.
gosh, no
It's
wonder
definitely
I
the thing.
felt that. Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Wow,
interesting
guys.
came through for you in the writing. I mean, that's makes sense. It's good to
Good.
hear.
Good job, you
But,
guys.
essentially what we do in part 2 of the book, which is about book mapping, is we teach readers how to take their idea and flesh out a very comprehensive plan for the entire book. So
Mm,
whether you're writing prescriptive nonfiction, again, that's like teaching the reader something, or
mm,
if you're writing creative nonfiction, which would be more of a story-driven
mm,
approach to nonfiction, we are going to help you kind of figure out what the book's transformation is. That's kind of the first step of book mapping, is saying, okay, here's
mm,
my idea. Now, for a reader who wants to, live out that idea or embrace that idea, how are you going to help take them from point A to point B throughout the entire book? And
mhm,
then from there, what are the chapters going to look like? If point A is where they begin at the
yeah.
beginning of the book and point B is where they end, the transformation of the book,
Mhm,
what are all of the pieces in the middle going to look like? So we kind of have a whole section on how to structure the chapters so that there's this logical feeling flow or an intuitive flow to
mm,
the content of the book. And then we teach you how to do that kind of at a smaller scale for each chapter as well.
mm,
So, Liz likes to say that book structure is like the invisible matrix behind a book, and it is what holds everything up. It really is so important to have your structure figured out. It's like having the
mm,
skeletons of your hand. Like we all learned from
mm.
Harry Potter, when you
Yeah.
don't have, bones in your arm, it's just like
Yeah.
this big floppy mess, right?
Favorite
That's what we
secrets.
all
I was
learned
just
from
watching that.
Harry Potter.
That is what we've learned from Harry Potter.
I
Yes.
love it.
So, but I mean, it's the same thing for your ideas. If you don't have a strong structure to hold everything up and to provide, that flow, that intuitive sense for the reader, it is all going to fall apart. And so that is what we're really teaching you to do kind of at a macro level for the entire book and at more of a micro level for every single chapter in your book as well.
Mm,
And I
mm,
think that is the secret sauce of Hungry Authors. That's the biggest value that we provide.
mm. Yes, and I'm so excited to have this for my next writing projects. Guys, you have to get this book. Please tell them where they can find it. Tell them about where they can find you, because I just know so many of our listeners are also just eager to get in touch with you guys. You are just the best.
You can go, well, on our website, which is hungryauthors.com, you'll find all of the options for buying our book. It's on all the major online book retailers. So you can pick your poison there. Obviously, you can go to the big one, but if you hate the man, you can go to all of the other smaller ones. It's there too. Um, and there you can also learn information about our Map Your Book cohorts, which we do a number of times a year. You can follow us on Instagram. That's our main social media platform where you can find out more of, just get updates about the things that are going on and what we're doing. Those are the two main ways to get in touch with us and learn more about it. And if you buy our book and you like it, please write a review. We are in major review collating phase. So if you like it, please go review it. And if you don't like it, then pretend this never happened.
Yeah. take your ghostwriting to a new level and don't even do it.
Yeah,
But we want you to read it. We know once you read it, you're going to love it. And
of
thank you
course.
for telling me that you're still doing the cohorts for the writing
Mm.
as well. So those who want time with you, you are offering that as well.
Yes. Yeah, this year in 2024 we've done 3 already and we're doing a 4th in October, and then we haven't set out our schedule for 2025 yet, but we need to do that soon.
Yeah.
Mm. Okay. Wow. Thank you guys so much for sharing this time, for encouraging our listeners. We are so excited for your launch, and you are just sharing so much of your gifts with us. So we just thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Krista.
thanks
You've
for
just
having
been amazing. I think, this podcast has been such a big part of my life, just
us.
personally. My husband and I have worked with you, and you've just been such a blessing to us. And so it is so exciting to get to be here with all of your listeners today. Thank you.
Thank you. Guys, I'm so glad we had the chance to do that together. Make sure you grab a copy of Hungry Authors for your library. You can take it at pace when you feel that it's the right timing, or you can jump right in and just say, I'm getting started. I know that November is a National Writing Month, but there's so many times to just take and allow yourself the grace and the courage to share your gifts, your legacy, your story, and shine your light. I love that we even got to talk Enneagram and marriage a little bit too. And I'm just geeked out thinking about you taking on a beautiful project. And I can't wait to step into my next one. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye bye.